let's get started. I'd like to call the October 12th Whatcom County Public Utility District meeting to order. Thank you all for attending. The first item on our agenda is a Pledge of Allegiance, and I believe it's my turn. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first item here, the next item is the approval of the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda, and are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes for me.
Okay, well, let's proceed. The next item is the consent agenda and the approval of the minutes of September 28th and the approval of the claims from October 12th.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as it reads.
And I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion carries. And let's move on to public comment. Anne, could you facilitate? Looks like we have none.
No public comment.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll close public comment. Let's move on to old business. And first item under old business is an update in the general manager appointment process. And John, could you do that?
Certainly I can. Commissioners, thank you. We have, Prothman has reviewed the applicants received thus far, has developed the list of semifinalists. We intend to be reviewing those shortly as candidates for public employment in executive session. And from there, the commission will be making some providing some directions on follow-up interviews, including how we might engage public open houses or other engagement with the public as well as staff. So we'll manage that around our COVID limitations and masking and how that might be. And we're just trying to navigate that minefield of the COVID rules for interaction also for the commission and the public in an open house that you've asked for. So that's just a short update because I don't want to get into the details of the applications. The parties at this time will save that for executive session.
And thank you, John. Yeah, and just to clarify for the benefit of the public, we're not discussing names at this point. And the reason is to protect the confidentiality of the applicants. Secondly, in the executive session, we will not be providing formal direction. We'll be providing guidance to the process.
No decisions will be made. Yeah, it's just direction guidance. Yeah.
And if there is a decision, we'll come back to public session and make a decision. Just supporting you, John.
Appreciate it.
Any further as far as the update on the process of the general manager appointment? I just want to say publicly, I appreciate very much the efforts of Prothman and John, your efforts as well in facilitating this process. It's been really well done, and the binders were excellent that we received. And just wanted to express thanks for that.
And I would like to second my thanks.
The binders were Prothman. We were just the delivery service.
Right. So then.
But Holly appreciated the assistance backing out of the driveway, Commissioner.
Hey, the last mile is the hardest part, as we know.
Oh.
That was good.
I know. It's a good transition to our next topic.
The broadband program update. We'll move on then. Thank you. Who would like to handle that?
That's Steve.
Okay, Steve.
Really?
Steve,
Well,
you're on.
Yeah,
Well, I know we had a broadband committee, a steering committee meeting last week. It was interesting discussion. In attendance was Gina Stark and Melissa Miller, are both of our commissioners, Christine and Michael, myself, and I think that was it, wasn't it? Oh, and Chris Walker, I'm sorry. And good discussion around the project and especially around the Port of Bellingham's work and whether or not the Port of Bellingham has a plan, and a lot of concern about whether or not that plan was in place and was being implemented, and the projects that the port was taking on really was following a good, solid laid out plan. I think that I was on the line. I was all remote except for Gina and her assistant, or Rob Fix's assistant in the Port of Bellingham's office. But so I was not able to catch, I would say probably 60% of the presentation or the discussion by Gina Stark. I think there was a lot of concern, a lot of questions relative to the plan. And there was, I think there's going to be, hopefully, there's going to be a lot of follow-up with Gina and with steering committee and with the Whatcom County Executive. Whatcom County Executive Sat Fall has requested a presentation by Gina on a more in-depth discussion around the plan. So with that, Christine, I'll turn it back over to you.
I mean, I went to our last steering committee meeting. You know, I'm not managing Chris Walker or our budget. So I think, you know, what we're doing at the PUD in terms of leveraging our resources to create change is Steve's responsibility. I would say I'm just trying to ask good questions in the steering committee meeting. That's the number one thing that I'm doing. And that's the only power that I have in the situation. So there's also been discussion of Michael Shepard and I talking to the county council. I think, you know, as I've said many times, I think there's increasing interest in what our plan on broadband is from a range of players and stakeholders in our county. And so communication is really critical. And I think we're still figuring that out. We're not communicating what the plan is effectively yet. So I think I would really love to hear more from Chris Walker directly to our commission about what the role of the PUD could be in this space. And so I think, you know, getting a presentation from him to our commission with some of his initial ideas would be really beneficial. But that's up to you, Steve, since you're managing him. So I'll delegate that to you, but that's just a thought that I think I would appreciate that. I don't know how the other commissioners feel.
I would support that.
Yeah, that's not a problem, and we can certainly arrange that. Absolutely. And I think that the closer we get to our presentation to the curb board in November, that will start to, you know, on our application for the grant to complete that feasibility study, as we're calling it. I think that Chris will be much better prepared to do just that. Have a good presentation to you all.
Commissioner Murphy.
Thank you, Alto. Well, both to Christine and to Steve. Christine, if you and Michael meet with the county council, will there be any discussions about their supporting through possibly grants? Or I know that the county is receiving some federal money. Is there any possibility some of that could go towards this? You know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's the plan. It's the ARPA dollars, the American recovery Act. What is our ARPA? It's the Recovery Act funds. I again, the acronyms are the ARPA fund. There's some ARPA funds that are, I guess, they're kind of penciled in for broadband, I guess is the best way to put it, Steve.
Well, I think the ARPA funds were really came out of the COVID situation, and so the federal government and then down to the state, then down to the local jurisdictions have a lot of flexibility in how those dollars are utilized. And so this county has taken a position that they will provide, excuse me, a significant amount of money for broadband and some of the other kinds of services like housing. I know housing is a big thing right now with the county. So, and I think I might have the P wrong, but I believe it's the American Recovery. I'm not so sure what the P stands for, but there's significant. I think this county has received or can receive up to $45 million.
And I think that's why they would like us to have better communication with the council, because there's obviously a tremendous number of needs in this county. And so making sure that we are telling our story and being really, having a clear plan that it, makes sense to the council is important to ensure that the ARPA funds are used for broadband. So, I think I think we're in a little bit of a tricky space right here, because the port has been working on this for longer than us. And so they have a staff person that's working on it. And so we've joined in this partnership. We are not putting, a lot of resources into it. But I think many people in the community feel like having more minds involved in shaping what the broadband program looks like in the county is important. And so, I think that it's just a little bit of I think collaboration and partnerships are really good. They take time and energy though to work out. And that's the space that we're in right now. And I think we're also still trying to really figure out what the PUD can do to bring the most value to the community on broadband and to this partnership with the port. And that is not a question I can answer. It's a question that I really need Chris Walker to help us answer and come to us with some different options for what that looks like. Because we have never done rigorous sort of data-driven analysis on what that could look like for the PUD. So that's really what I'm hoping that he can dig into and that he could present to us so that we can start having a better sense of what our role is in this partnership. So
I was going to tell both you and Steve, thank you for all you're doing on it, because, and everyone else, because, I was brought up with the idea that broadband was more or less for TV and maybe phone and computers. And I have learned now that it's more for education and keeping jobs going.
Yeah.
And so it's played a big different role. And I really support moving forward as fast as we can. And Steve, that leads me to in our minutes last time, we talked about, you mentioned responding to the port on the next step to take the fiber north of Mosquito Lake Road to Linden and over to Ferndale. Because there's fiber already in Ferndale, couldn't we kind of work from both ways? Is there any discussion about that?
Excuse me, Commissioner. I think that, yes, it's my understanding, and based upon Gina's comment at the last steering committee meeting, that is their next step. Now, their next step is based upon basically a 4-segment, 4-quadrant segment that of lane fiber, hanging fiber around the county. And that quadrant approach has been disrupted already because their first quadrant was going to be up to Glacier from Deming, down Highway 9 to Acme, possibly connecting into Skagit County on Highway 9. Now they're taking Mosquito Lake Road, and then they're taking that area around Everson Nooksack just to the east up. And then they are talking with a private provider to make that connection and build that system. And so in those discussions, they're now leapfrogging to take the next location that they have identified. I can tell you that I think that the concern by some of us on the steering committee is that their approach may be a bit haphazard, may not be. But I think that when you say, there's fiber in Ferndale, well, there may be. But I think that the port is taking this approach of, okay, we're talking to this private provider and they're ready to go in the next section that they've identified. And I think that that's the concern. I know I might not be answering your question really directly, but my understanding, and I think that's one of the main drivers of some of us on the steering committee in developing this quote long-range plan for the entire county, is to look at the entire county, identify areas around the county that are either unserved or underserved, and then start. Maybe this is bad approach, but start picking the low-hanging fruit, the ones that are most seriously impaired by not having that service available. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but yes, I mean, there are definitely areas. There are areas, if you look at that area from, say, Sumas to Blaine, there are areas up there that already have fiber. There are a lot of areas that don't. But I think what's happening with the port right now is that they're taking the low-hanging fruit and working with this private provider in building the system. Now, is that going to be 5 years from now, if nobody else steps in, is that going to be a county-wide system? I think the concern is no, that it may not be. I don't know how else to say it.
Okay, well, do we still have with Puget Sound Energy the contract for hanging wire on their poles?
Well, we have approved with Puget Sound Energy an agreement to hang fiber where we have gone out and hung it. But that's not the same as having a franchise with Whatcom County government to work within their rights of way.
Well, the reason why I say that is because if we could be a main player, and I don't know what fiber costs in rolls, and I don't know what it would cost a contract, but I would just hope that we could purchase the fiber, dark fiber, and start hanging it as much as we can around Whatcom County. And then as the time comes, either private or public connects to it. But, I'd like to see something done like that so I could say we're doing something.
Yeah. That's interesting that you bring up the purchase of fiber, because that was a question that Christine raised at our last steering committee meeting, and that is there fiber available? If we had the plan completed 6 months ago and we were chalking off, if you would, segment by segment by segment or area by area, can we actually get the fiber to go ahead and build? And the answer is, we don't know yet.
And the prices are really fluctuating because of both inflation and supply chain.
Yes.
Well, thank you for questions, both of you.
some would call it stagflation, but anyway, I wanted to express what my experience is so far, and that is, I'm seeing what started for the port with a very clear direction of building backbone for a variety of reasons, and they were the only actor in the county. To go from where there was a very clear vision endorsed by their commission to one where the vision is less clear. I wouldn't say opaque for someone like me, but I would say for the community, probably opaque. And there's two sets of factors for that. One is because the original undertaking was more complicated than envisioned, more expensive than envisioned. And because of the COVID situation and the amount of federal funding, there's much more enthusiasm on the part of the private sector to use federal dollars, public dollars, that they can access directly without the involvement of local government for the sake of building some infrastructure. And as a result, the backbone effort that the port originally planned to some degree is and can be, actually is being co-opted by the private sector, not in a open access model, but in a proprietary model, but nonetheless, backbone is being built. And then the amount that the original port proposal was going to overbuild is becoming increased by the amount of private sector fiber that's being laid with federal dollars and other sources of income. So it's putting a little bit of a negative weight on the original port model. The second thing is the risk and complexity as the port has continued on their endeavor of what they were originally planning to do is becoming better understood. And the financial footprint of what they were originally proposing is being better understood. And that's also an encouraging factor. And then the third factor is that there's other folks wanting and able to participate in the county and the PUD. And I can see why that's a very frustrating experience. I mean, I'm imagining the people probably most frustrated are the port committees who vote in favor of the original countywide backbone effort. I can imagine them being very frustrated because they thought they were about to do something quickly to build some backbone up. And of course, that's not what happened. And so I'm just trying to share that perspective because I think it allows me to not be annoyed with anybody and recognize that there all of these exogenous factors are what we have to work with in coming up with our plans. And so I don't have any solutions for how to exactly get out of the situation except for further discussion with and at least we have now an expert on hand that we can rely on and dialogue with to figure out way of it. I definitely appreciate the presentation at our last PUD meeting by Steve and Christine talking about the port's idea to do a loop out Glacier Way. And I absolutely embrace the idea that getting some people served is better than continue to talk about it. And recognize where, I know the public hasn't started screaming at me yet. What are you doing? What are you guys doing? But I imagine it could come at some point in the near future. And so there will be a record.
There will. And I think so. I really feel like we lost a lot of time on broadband this year with just how slow. I mean, we thought we were going to have a broadband FTE, by the spring. We didn't. We got Chris on. in, late August, early September. I feel like he's up to speed now on what the situation is. My feeling, Steve, is like, we need him to be doing as much work on this as possible. I would love to get a memo with some different possible directions for what we could do from, hey, you guys missed the train. Like, one of you should be on the steering committee and go once a month and ask questions. That's it. Versus really getting some, financial skin in the game, helping to fund, what are our, how could we be maximally involved? And yes, that's what I need to, I can't do program design as a commissioner, and I'm not going to do program design. So that's what I need to hear from Chris. And so I just hope we can get a timetable for when the commissioners can get some of that. For me, a short memo and a presentation and then a conversation would be really helpful.
Can you check with Chris to see if he can make the October 26th meeting? Oh, you're muted.
You were sort of breaking up there.
I'm just curious, could we see if Chris could make the October 26th meeting for a presentation?
We certainly will try.
Okay.
And may I add, Steve,
Yes.
what are you thinking is going to be Chris's presentation to us? Because I would like to not only hear about where we're at, but where we're going and what does it take to get there in his presentation.
Here's the challenge. Pure and simple. That
There's always a challenge, Steve.
I know, but we are, if you look at the discussions that we've had over the last several months, and I think Christine hit on it, but we are slow in coming into this in terms of where the port is, where the port's been. I think the port's doing a great job in getting some projects moving forward. There's no question about that. They've been before the county council with the EDI fund. They have worked with the county executive in getting support for some of their funding efforts. I think that Gina, considering the load that she has with so many other things that are going on, I think Gina has done an excellent job. They hired Melissa Miller as a consultant. I can't tell you how effective she's been or if she has been effective in terms of providing resources to Gina. So I think that the port has done, I wouldn't say an admirable job, but I think that the port has done a good job in moving some of this forward. Now the PUD steps in and says, we're here, we want to help, we want to figure out what our role is. And I think that it depends. You asked what Chris's presentation should look like or would look like. I think this is the quandary that we're in, is that I believe that we should step back. We've applied for the CURB funding for the grant, for the feasibility. I think we should proceed with that. I think that Chris should continue to try to get as much information as he can from Gina in terms of where they're at, what they're using in terms of their mapping. She started that discussion at the last steering committee that she says that she has a map that works. We'll see. She says that she has a plan. We'll see. But I think that we should move forward in developing the plan. Now, November 18th is the day that the CURB board makes that decision. I think that we should be prepared to move ahead with the planning process with Chris. And if CURB approves our request for funding, fine. If they don't, I think we should proceed. We've got funding in our budget this year to do that work, and I think we should proceed. Here's the other thing, and I think this is part of the complication that we're seeing, is that Commissioner Deshmani is on the City of Bellingham Broadband Advisory Committee. The City of Bellingham and the area of the county that is encompassed by the City of Bellingham is significant. And so we're working, the port is basically working around the City of Bellingham. And I think that it would be good to make a bad pun, but make a connection to the City of Bellingham's Broadband Advisory Committee and try to see if there's an opportunity to, if you would, in some way or shape or form, bring them into the fold in terms of long-range planning.
Have you connected, Chris, with any of the City of Bellingham staff working on the Broadband Advisory Group?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, great.
Yeah.
Chris has spoken, Eric. Yeah.
Okay.
The other is that, and you know, I just talked to some folks from other counties in the state on this side of the mountain. And two of them in the last week. One of them has used NoaNet extensively, continues to use them. Another one started out using them and is not using them anymore. For what I hear from the county that's not using them, some, you know, if they're accurate, if it's not just personality issues, there, you know, some real issues in terms of using NoaNet. So I think that it, you know, your long answer.
Knowing that for kind of consulting and work or for build outs?
Yeah, it's consulting and advice, basically, planning.
Okay.
And I'm not going to share with you who that was. But my point is this, that I think that we can really work with Chris to shape his proposal. That's all.
And Steve, you know, well, let me back up and say how much I appreciate, you know, what the Port of Bellingham has done, is doing, and is working future-wise. And I'm happy that we are able to be part of that partnership and moving forward. But since we threw our hat in the ring on broadband, we are now, the commissioners are being contacted by the community about participating in that. And the people that have spoken to me, mainly parents on educating children, are desperate. They're not just saying it'd be nice, they're desperate. And if you take your job serious, and I know everyone here does, but what I'm just trying to say is that, you know, your heart goes out to them. I talk to these parents and I know what they're saying. I just want us to have a plan. I know we're looking for this grant. I think it's called Curve, you say, but what are we even going to do with that money if we did get it? I'm not even aware of what we'd do with the money if we did get it. And so I don't know what a plan is to move forward with it, without it. And, you know, but I want to do it in step with the port. I get that, but I also want to be accountable to the people that are calling upon us in the community.
Well, here's the other thought that has come up in discussion about, quote, the plan, and that is this, that we may develop a plan. We may not implement that plan. The plan may be implemented by the port and or private sector. Now, the other option is that the PUD continues to develop a plan, starts implementing it, and in certain areas of the county, either the private sector or the port or the PUD may implement. Just because the PUD develops the plan does not mean that the port now is sequestered off to the side doing, you know, these small little pieces in the county. It just means that we have a plan that the private sector, the port, the PUD, and possibly even say cities like Blaine and Sumas has their own internet service up there. That they can step in and take those pieces. It just means that at the end of the day, and I know we're all trying to accomplish getting a quota plan in place so that we can suck some of those federal dollars and state dollars into the infrastructure basket, if you would. But we because of how fast this has moved in the last year and a half on the federal and state level, we're all trying to go, oh, we got to get the money, we got to get the money, we got to get the money. Doesn't mean that if 3, 4, 5 months from now, we're simply now got quota plan in place, that we've missed anything. So.
Well, I do think that there is urgency around trying to do more of this analysis on our end so that we can be a more informed part of this partnership. We all agreed to sign this interlocal agreement. We said we wanted to support the port's efforts on broadband. And as far as I can tell, the only way we're supporting the efforts is by me co-chairing these meetings twice a month. We're not bringing anything else to the table yet. And so that's, I agree with Mike. I continue to hear from folks on broadband, and it is really heartbreaking, especially when you hear from parents that feel like they're letting their children down because they can't get this basic utility service. And I know we have said that many, many times. It just doesn't feel like we've moved fast enough. And so, you know, we've got 2.5 months left in this year, and I think we really need to make it count. We have budget for it in our own budget. It'd be great if we get the curb funding. We know the Mount Baker Foundation is also eager to help. And so I think that, you know, I really want us to take a positive approach to this and say, how can we build on what the port is doing and make it make it better, or help us move faster? Because it comes down to serving the community and helping as many people as possible in a financially responsible way, where we are good stewards of public funds. But I mean, there is a lot of money out there with the, you know, the $135 million from the state broadband office. And so, you know, I think time is of the essence here. And so I hope that Chris has the bandwidth to dig in and help start coming up with some more concrete options for us.
You know, here's a thought, and that I don't know what Chris's time is available, as you say, bandwidth. And we do have a 2021 budget for about $75,000 just to do this kind of work. And that is, we could call on Chris today and say, let's assume we don't have the time to wait for the broadband, and we move ahead.
You mean we don't have time to wait for curb?
Curb, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be waiting for curb at all. I think we should, if we get curb, that's a bonus. But yeah, we don't have time to wait. I think that's a great idea.
I'll have that discussion with him today. I'm certainly not opposed to it. I'm just trying to make this work in the context of everything that's going on.
And if we get curb, we'll call an audible and make modifications, obviously, to meet the grant requirements and all that.
Yeah.
It's a planning grant. People's
Yes.
plans change all the time. So I think they're probably used to that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It'll be a minor audible. I'm sorry, that's a reference to in a football play when the play's already started. An audible is when you make a minor modification to the play while it's happening.
I was a cross country runner. I don't know.
So I apologize. I used lingo that maybe not everybody was familiar with.
Thanks for explaining that.
Yes.
All right. I think, to be honest with you, I think Chris is ready to go.
Let's
Yeah.
unleash him then. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have a discussion with him today about it.
Thank you.
Release the Kraken, is that it?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh God, that used to
I
happen.
know what you're talking about.
That phrase doesn't mean the same thing for me anymore. We need a real Kraken to be unleashed, maybe. Reset the term. Anyway, I appreciate all of the discussion of the update. Is there further discussion under the broadband program update? I guess I should mention that I've been under the weather for a week. I actually missed the meeting. It's the only meeting I've missed, colleagues. I am planning to review that this week. There's a video recording and I will report to the commission via email because it's past due. To Steve, and Steve, if you could you'll send my notes off to the other commissioners. So apologize, colleagues, for missing a meeting.
I hope you're feeling better.
Yeah, I'm better. I appreciate that. So moving on in the agenda, we have one item under new business, which is to approve resolution number 801 regarding surplus of district equipment.
Commissioners, I think I can take that as pretty clear. We just got a list of items. And I won't, obviously, I'm not going to go through each one of them. These are mostly, as you can probably tell, are mostly either telephone, SCADA, computer equipment, old monitors, printers. We do have a few items in the area of the electricity, some circuit switchers. I don't know what somebody's going to do with the variable frequency drive, but with that, this is just a process that we need to ask you to follow in surplusing any unused or unusable equipment. So
And we do this annually, correct, Steve?
yes, we do. We do.
I'm
Comments,
good with,
commissioners?
I'm good with making a motion to approve resolution 801.
I have a comment, and it may be appropriate to do it afterwards, but I'll just bring it up now and you can advise, Steve.
Okay.
The comment is that there are a few groups around the community who've begun, and perhaps in the past it's happened as well, who are taking surplus equipment from public entities, particularly computers, and repurposing them for people who are economically disadvantaged. For example, TAG has a project which they're taking used computers, and I know that public agencies are very cautious about used computers for obviously secure, and we're utilities, so we are doubly so. But perhaps with that maybe as the exception, or maybe offering computers without the hard drive, for example, and requiring the tag replace the hard drive, something like that. If we could have a conversation with TAG, Technology Alliance Group, about if any of this equipment is equipment that could be beneficially used for low income or other people of that sort, we could perhaps provide more, even more public benefit as a result of our surplus equipment.
We can, Commissioner, thank you for that. We can certainly check into that before we provide in this case, we've got what, three computers and then some monitors. But And what we need to check on is what the process we have to follow legally to do that. That's all.
Yeah, I think with computers and phones, I think the thing is that a clever ill-motivated agent outside of the PUD is able to reconstruct a hard drive even after it's been wiped.
Well, what I'm-
And so that's the big concern, and it would probably be true of an iPhone as well.
Yeah. And we will check on that. I think that if you give us, if you pass the resolution, it does not eliminate us checking in to see what those possibilities are.
Right, I believe the language of the resolution is all
All options.
all options, yeah.
Yeah.
I might add, in past years, I know at least on one occasion, we did provide surplus materials to RE sources for their use and resale.
And I believe that there's a benefit if there is, if all local governments, Whatcom County, the city of Bellingham, and all the other cities and the port, have similar programs, so that, I mean, you can imagine how much equipment all these local governments get rid of. I mean, we're tiny, but like Whatcom County or the city of Bellingham, or, there's a lot of materials, a lot of equipment that could go beneficially towards to the community. For example, we spent a lot of money buying hotspots, but there's probably a lot of hotspots that are being retired, or wireless devices that are being retired that could go to the public benefit. So if it's okay, maybe what I'd like to do is facilitate a meeting between the right person at TAG and our resources and who's on our staff. And I'll just help set that up, if that's okay, Steve.
Sure. Have them contact me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do so.
No, I think that's a great idea. And
Is there any further discussion before moving forward?
There's a motion on the floor, but I did not hear a second.
yeah, Christine's,
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries.
thank you.
So the next item on our agenda is and John, I'm really working on nailing the 9 o'clock number, by the way, in case you're wondering.
You're doing great. I was just about to send
That-
him an email saying, I think we're right on target. So
Yeah,
late, you're late.
that comment was purely to stay on track. The next is the general manager report. Steve, you have 7 minutes and 32 seconds.
I'll use 32 seconds. Along with a number of other grants that Rebecca continues to work on and administer. We had a meeting last week with a group of staff members from the Watershed Management Board to discuss the next round of grants for under the 6091 or the Hearst case Stream Restoration Act. And the outcome of that was there was 3 different projects that came up. We presented one, and that is to look at the North County Regional Water Supply System area from Blaine to Sumas. Basically, if you look at the river and if you turn or draw a line up from the river up to the border, align with the west side of city of Sumas, going then west to Blaine and then down to Lummi. We are proposing that we apply for a grant to conduct a feasibility on how to develop a water supply system in that area, looking at the river, looking at the tributaries, looking at groundwater and all of that. that was met with, I wouldn't say considerable support, but definitely support from different agencies like DOE and Fish and Wildlife. So we will be in the next couple of months here moving ahead with putting together a proposal. And so that's the only thing I had, Commissioners.
Well, that's very interesting. Comments, questions from the commissioners?
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Steve, this is not for you. Thank you for that report, but I was wondering if John could kind of chime in on updates on public meetings. Are we getting any closer to having one?
If you want to mask and be distant and have an overflow area for people who can't come in, we could arrange that. I think the dilemma has been having an adequate overflow area in case you have a number of people attending, you'd have to suspend the meeting. And so that's the kind of the logistical dilemma. Is if you had, I think what we count, 6 or 8 people show up in the commission meeting room, you may not meet the space, and the 5 of us here, you may not make the spacing requirements in the meeting room. And then you'd have to have an overflow area if people were trying to attend in person, as well as anybody you'd have to allow them to also participate electronically. So having those logistical components in place was frustrating, that opportunity. I would tell you I'm just thinking out loud here, Blaine doesn't do it. The port has had some participation in their executive sessions by one or commissioner maybe in with staff, but otherwise it's not in person. They're still virtual. Council, I think, is still virtual, city council, as well as county council. So I don't think you're seeing a lot of the local governments move to in person. I'm thinking Everson might be in person, but they have kind of a large space they can move into and usually don't have a lot of attendees.
Well, John, I think virtual will always be part of our future. I don't think we're ever
No
gonna get away.
question.
So,
It's the overflow, Mike.
okay, but couldn't that be looked upon as those who want to attend a meeting? Could we call in and reserve?
Not under the orders. Not under the orders. You had to provide an overflow space and virtual.
And okay. I just don't understand why someone couldn't say, I will attend in person or I'll be on virtual.
I understand the logic dilemma you're confronting. Is that
Well, the
how,
reason I
if
say
virtually,
that, Energy Northwest does that. PUD does that. They want to know, are you going to be here, attend virtual, or are you going to be in person? And we just chime in and say yes or no, and we go forward with the meeting. But the doors are
so those might be a little, I don't know if Energy Northwest or WPUDA is subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. So they fall under a different set of rules. It would be like, you can go to a stadium and see a Husky game outdoors and sit next to each other and you're supposed to wear a mask. You can go to an indoor basketball or hockey game and you can sit next to each other and you're supposed to wear a mask. You can go to a board meeting of a private board and you're supposed to space or wear a mask. So the rules for public entities or non-public or nonprofits are going to be different than an open government meeting based on the governor's orders. I appreciate your desire, Mike. I do. And I think that's reflected by a lot of people, but I think there are also concerns with, not to try to take a political position on public health, but there's still concerns about the Delta variant, other variants, breakthroughs, cases. Our numbers have been way up. We've had deaths and more deaths than anticipated this fall in Whatcom County, and hospital capacity limitations at times. So I think they're still trying to make those arrangements and accommodate all those factors and considerations.
okay. I'm not going to go down without a
That
fight.
sounded despondent, Mike.
I look forward to us all being able to be in the same room for these meetings.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if maybe, if it's feasible this year to have some kind of a holiday gathering either before or after the new year. We have a departing GM. You know, I think there's a particularly acute need for us all to get together with the beauty. So I urge you, John, to think creatively.
Yeah, we'll find a way to creatively do that. We'll-
And if we're outside, a lot of those, I mean, I've been to some outdoor events with public entities, so I think
Yeah, we'll
there's
find a
nothing
way.
better than
We'll find a
being
way.
outside in December in the Pacific
Yeah.
Northwest. So
Just,
We'll find a way to rent a lot of heaters.
yeah, just rent a lot of infrared heaters. Yeah.
I have one other thing related to the GM report. And so Steve, I just was wondering, and you don't need to do it now, but would love to get an update on what's going on with the Center for Sustainable Infrastructure. And those conversations that were being had, you know, between the port and the county executive and getting potentially EDI funding for some of that work. So either maybe in our next meeting or via email, it would be great to hear a little bit more about what's been going on with that.
Okay.
I have a question about the, would it be fair to call it a piped water feasibility study?
It depends upon where that pipe is going. Yes, go ahead.
How much have we checked in with, so with California Creek, I recall that the Environmental Caucus was slow to express support and actually never really did express support for a California Creek proposal. And the tribes chose not to provide comments on it. Have we checked in with either of those groups to see where they stand on this particular proposal and whether they're supportive of the idea of the, because, you know, quite often in principle, you can find people be supportive, but when rubber meets the road, then they figure out a reason to be cautious.
Sure. I can
So
tell you
what-
that. I can
What
tell you
work are we
that.
doing to prevent that?
I can tell you that at this last meeting, we had Fish and Wildlife, we had Department of Ecology, we had both tribes. And of course, as is always the case when you have staff members from the tribes, they can make statements or not make statements. And then, you know, those are not positions of the tribes. Those are just comments by staff. We had a representative of the small cities. We had a representative of the city of Bellingham and the county and agriculture. Henry Beerlink was there, and myself and Rebecca. And when we made our presentation, and it was very, very brief, but we talked about the concept. There was strong support from Fish and Wildlife, strong support from Department of Ecology. There was a couple of questions from the tribes, and there was strong support from agriculture. Now, what will that look like as we move forward? I can't tell you. I really can't. So.
So
but-
being the elected person, politically responsible, I would like an executive summary of our proposal. And as a result, I think the other commissioners also benefit from it. I would like to run it up the flagpole with people I know at the tribes and in the Environmental Caucus to make sure that they have ample opportunity to express concerns at this point.
You know, I think that one of the things that was very helpful in that meeting and with that discussion was that there was strong support for a large project in the South Fork, and it came out of the land trust in purchasing Stewart Mountain or a portion of Stewart Mountain.
Mhm.
and that was strongly supported by the Nooksack tribe. That's been part of their thing for years in developing, acquiring and then managing forest land for the purpose of soil management and as well as then storage of water within soil. Anyway, we felt it was just coincidental, but very opportunistic, if that's the way to say it, is that because now we've got two, and we don't expect these to be competing at all, but complementary, a big piece on the north side and a big piece on the south side of the basin. So
True. So ideas like Stewart Mountain, which I'm not sure that it would preclude any economic activity, but it would dramatically limit economic activity on Stewart Mountain, are typically a no-brainer in terms of environmental caucus and tribe support. What's the more difficult thing to do is to identify projects which actually both foster economic development and natural resources. And that's where folks have a harder time coming forward and expressing concerns if they have it until the last minute. And that's part of the reason that I think we struggled with our California Creek project. And that's why I think it's beneficial for us to try to identify any potential concerns early on.
I agree.
So I'd like the opportunity to review and also try to get feedback from others.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
get, can you and or Rebecca get something to me and the commissioners on that?
Okay.
Commissioner-
O'Toole, because of time, would it be possible to maybe go right to the executive session and
I sent them an email that said 9:15, so you can continue this discussions and your commissioner reports and have a little personal break if you needed it.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I blew my timing, John. I'm sorry.
I just watched the car crash. That's all I do.
Oh,
Oh.
But I sent them a note 9:15.
Okay. Anything more under the general manager's report?
I have nothing else, Commissioner. Sorry.
Okay, well, let's move on to the commissioner reports.
I can go real quick. There was a meeting, an EDI meeting. It was related to a loan program for to improve the affordability of housing. So just kind of an overview of that program to get feedback from the members of the EDI. And so nothing super relevant to what we're doing, but obviously affordable housing impacts all of us and our ability to hire and things like that. And then since our last PUD meeting, there's been 2 convenings of the steering committee, the broadband steering committee meeting. And I know Steve is forwarding the notes, so we talked quite a bit about broadband. So those are the only per diems that that's what I've been up to in my official capacities as a commissioner.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Murphy?
I've already reported last time on my per diems with Energy Northwest and Wapuda. However, people are still talking to me about the broadband, so I brought up a lot of questions today. And I appreciate the response back because I'm going to go back and talk to a few people. And the other thing is still the drought issues in Whatcom County. The rain does not mean our problems have gone away. So wells are still low, some are still hurting for water. So I haven't heard anything more. Steve, are we going to be doing anything more in water drought issues to maybe provide some kind of assistance? Or has that been discussed anymore since I brought it up a while back?
We have, we currently have, I think, 3 different small, very small water associations, south and west of Ferndale, that we're working with on supplying them with water because their wells are basically drying up. One of them, as far as I know, is dried up. And then we're working with folks from Whatcom County on some drought resiliency issues. And at that point, that's all we're doing so far. So.
Well, I appreciate it. You know, there's still the private well owners out there that are still purchasing water once a week, 300, twice a week, some 600. It is quite costly. At least if we could get some kind of water to these people free, even though transporting may cost some money, but it is quite an expensive weekly burden to take on.
Could you, when you have an opportunity, could you have those folks contact me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I'm not saying we can do it. I'm not saying that we can do anything. I'm just saying that it's important to start building. First of all, there's a possibility that we may be able to help, but also it's important that we start building that resource of, you know, that data, building that database on where those problems are.
Yeah, that's a good plan. Thank you.
I'm confused. I assume that the wells that run dry are because they're relatively shallow. And I assume that when there was rain, that problem would immediately be solved. So can you educate me a little bit about why wells stay dry even after it rains substantially?
Who do you want to hear that from, Steve, or?
I'll let Mike start, Commissioner.
Yeah, it is a lot of shallow wells that are having this problem. And however, because it rains, depends on how many inches it rains, it does take quite a while for it to be absorbed down to that level. For instance, my well, I monitor it. My well is about 20 inches lower this year than any other recorded time I've done it. And I've lived in this place 40 years. It's really low. I have water because I've gone a little deeper with my well, but it is down and it's not recovering yet with all the rain. It just takes a long time and a lot of water to get down to that depth to provide the recovery it needs. It's just a very slow process. Probably will not see it actually reach that till sometime next year. And it could be even as far away as March before you'll start to see the level of water come up. It's a very, very slow process. I don't know
So
if
the
I,
water preferentially moves horizontally rather than vertically, basically.
yeah, that's, you can say that.
Yeah, okay.
I think in some cases that may be true, but I think you're also saying that depending upon the length of time that we don't get rain, this year, would we have 74 days without having a measurable amount of rainfall, and the soils dry out, and it takes a long time for the soil to be reconstituted, or basically for that sponge to fill back up before that well is affected. And I think that's what we're seeing this year, the last couple of years. One of the individuals that we're having a discussion with on the southwest of Ferndale, they contacted us last year and said that they were having problems with their well. So I just think that it's a combination of temperature. This year we had the high temperatures. We had an extended time without rainfall, and those soils get dried up. And so, you know, unless winter produces, as John said, winter already started, you know, unless winter produces a certain amount of consistent rainfall, we could see this to be just the start or the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that's very true. In fact, my fields now are green. They look beautiful for my cattle and stuff. However, if I go out there and dig down 12 inches, it's dry again. It's just almost bone dry as I dig down. So it's only the first 6 inches maybe that really seems to be moist again, and then it just starts to dry out after that. So the water really has not penetrated that deep due to the dryness that we've had.
I was imagining you digging, you know, feet deep holes in your field.
Well, that's true when I'm putting fence in. I'm digging a lot of post holes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So no, thank you for that education. It makes sense to me, but it takes time. Is the main point. It takes time for the water to go down that far. So.
And
Right.
if it ever gets there.
Yeah. I have no meetings to report in my commissioner reports. I mentioned the broadband advisory group with the city, and I will be reporting on that after this meeting. So that completes commissioner reports, and should we take a quick check on public comment before we go into executive session? Ann, could you help with that?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Close that period.
I anticipate the executive session will be at least a half hour, possibly an hour. I think what I would say it'll be an hour. If for some reason we're done early, we'll just go into recess until the hour is completed to close the meeting. But if we're not done in an hour, we'll notice this. And this is just going to be the commission, myself and Bill McDonald.
No action.
No actions anticipated afterwards. Thank you, Mike.
Great.
You have commissioners, you have a link in your calendar or in your email, and I'll go over there now.
Thank you all. See you here after the executive session.
Mike and Christine, do you want to wait a couple more minutes for Atul to come back on, or do you all want to just adjourn on your own?
It's up to Christine. I can close the meeting because of the VP.
Yeah. Why don't you just close the meeting, Mike?
Okay. Then at 12:01, we're going back into the public meeting, and being no further business, I will adjourn the meeting at 12:01. Is that okay? Okay, I got a thumbs up from John. That's all we ever need, isn't it?
Sure is.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.